A bit of my story, I grew up in a family business. My co-founder, Amy Minnick, also grew up in business. And we saw the incredible power that business could have, both for good and the not so good. And then as we were at NCF, and I was specifically, leaving the business world after the MBA to do the charitable side, I saw a need that couldn't be met by charity alone. And that's when we were in Africa, and this woman looked at me and said, there's only two things that my people need: Jesus Christ and a job. And then she said, business has the willpower to transform societies. And so, our tagline, what if your investments could change the world? You all who are part of this webinar today are sophisticated financially, and you know that all dollars have an agenda. It just depends on what that agenda is. So sometimes we don't want to think about it. I shop at Amazon because it's easy and don't think so much about what it might be doing to my local economy. Well, if you make it too easy, that's kind of the way that things go. And when we joined Impact and started Impact Foundation, this was what I would call a relatively small party. It was hard to find product, and it was hard to find people who were interested in what we were doing. And, we were early, we were decorating the ballroom, but now it's amazing what has happened. Tim referenced it, but over the last 5 to 7 years, it's a much more robust ecosystem. Still early on, but there are options all across the board. And David has some amazing ones that he'll tell you about at Talenton, and Jeff has some great ones that he's going to talk to you about as well. So Tim, if you go to the next slide, this is the definition of impact investing. Investing in enterprises with intention to generate a measurable social, environmental, and/or, this is our part, kingdom transformation alongside a financial return. So the classic impact investing definition leaves out the kingdom piece. But if you're looking at faith-driven investing, the kingdom piece is added back in. And for many of the people that we serve, it's their primary motivation. The families that we serve, really, when you get down to it, are concerned with two things. They want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, after their last day, and they want to make sure that they do a great job with their children on the way. Those are pretty much, when it gets down to the needs, what their needs really are. And so what does that mean about our capital that we stored? There's lots of questions about this. And Tim said, there was a continuum. Philanthropy is how God makes a lot of things work. Business has also been created by the Lord, as we know that work was pre-fall. And so, how do we marry those two things together? So this slide here on the left is specifically focused on charitable capital. So just know that there's many, many people who use their personal investment capital to make impact investments. And Jeff's going to go more into that. And David also helps with that. But Impact Foundation was created out of National Christian Foundation specifically to help people steward charitable dollars. And we don't really get into when should you use your charitable capital or personal capital, because both can be a great answer to some of these questions. But the times when you would use charitable capital would be three different times. You have excess charitable capital that's underutilized. So if you have money in your NCF fund and you have it in the money market and it's not returning much at this point because nothing is in the money market, maybe you want to put it into an impact investment. Time two would be you need a tax deduction this year. And so, you send it over to NCF or you do a non-liquid gift with them, and that frees up cash to make an impact investment. The third reason why you would use charitable capital for an impact investment is you've spent too much time with Todd Harper, and you really believe that God owns everything, and you're totally sold out to the fact that you don't need any more, and your kids don't need any more. And so at that point, it makes all the sense in the world to do all your private equity and venture and everything else from your charitable fund, because you don't have, well, obviously you get the tax deduction on the way in, which could be worth 40% or more. And then you don't have to pay capital gains when the investment has a return. And just to be clear, that returns come back into your funded impact foundation. We push it back to your NCF fund, and it just grows your kingdom dollars for giving or more impact investing. So what's that amounted to? Well, if you look on the left, there's approaching $1 trillion of capital that's been given away, but not sent to end user charities. So those are dollars in the Gates Foundations of the world, National Christian Foundations, and Fidelity Charitable. Most of those are invested in S&P type investments. 100 billion actually goes out to charity in an average year. So can we take advantage of the trillion instead of just the 100 billion? And if you look on the right side, philanthropy is one block. So if that's what we're counting on alone to change the world, we need to think bigger. Investable assets are really a place where there's a tremendous opportunity to get dollars in to align with your faith and to make a difference in the world. So in scripture, there's 4 uses of capital that we see. Capital for giving, hugely important part in everyone's spiritual journey. It's why NCF exists, and they're the best in the world at helping you align your family, your values, and everything else for gifts. Also in scripture, there was gifts to support the temple and priests. That's great. A lot of NCF dollars go to churches. Then there's this other piece. We use capital for market rate financial return. And then finally in gleaning. So I'll talk briefly about gleaning. Gleaning in companies is interesting because there's things that you may do and it may not make financial bottom line sense. So a lot of you are business owners. Sometimes you go above and beyond to start a fund to help people when they have, medical expenses or funerals. You go above what the government is calling for. You pay above minimum wage to workers where you could ship things out other places. All of these could be considered gleaning. Now, I've talked with business owners who say, no, that's just good business. Yes, I love it when the Bible aligns with just good business and you can do all these kind of things and still people leave work saying, wow, I don't know, but that company takes care of me, my family. They love the environment. They pay our vendors on time or early. This is the apologetic that we need nowadays is anyone who leaves work from a Christian-owned company should be just so excited about the quality of life that they get in the company. And those are the kind of companies that we get to invest in at Impact Foundation. So who is the customer for this? Most of you who've called in right now, entrepreneurial investors. They're looking for business opportunity. People who use Impact Foundation have charitable wealth set aside, like I mentioned. They have a stewardship mentality that God owns it all, and they're concerned about the next generation. So on this 2x2, the left side is the spiritual and social return, and the bottom axis is the financial return. Obviously, everybody would love to have their investments in Kingdom Impact investing quadrant, getting high returns, that's market rate, sometimes better, and also impacting the kingdom. We also have a number of givers who specifically are looking for low return, high spiritual and social return investments. David specializes in some of those, and he'll give you some examples. But, our board chair has said, we don't always believe that, in Africa, you need to be making 18 to 20%, but that's not possible to change the world and take people out of poverty always. And so we look for investments that may only give us 4 or 5%. Some people would call that foolish investing. But if it's changing the world for Christ, the returns are 100-fold or more. This is where there's options, and a lot of people who get really into this plot their investments. And a good investment is one that does what you expect it to do. So if you expect it to reach 1,000 people and return 4%, and it does, then that's a good investment. And that's part of what we bet for at Impact Foundation. So these are just 3 examples. I'll go over quickly. The hero in the story is never Impact Foundation, and it's not even you all, the givers. It's really the impact companies. These are the people on the front lines who are making a difference. So on the left, this is a franchisee at Mercado Fresco, which is a charity that we make loans to from Impact Foundation, and they're paying back the loans into these impact accounts. They have started a micro franchise, and there's over 150 women now who use their home to sell fresh foods in these really tough kind of inner city ghetto areas where before they could only access, Coca-Cola and chips. Now they have a healthy fresh food market, which has a huge impact. But also the average dollars that these women have to spend are going from $2 a day to $5 a day. But the biggest impact, and I speak Spanish, so I got to interview a lot of these women. They all say, before I had to go 2 hours to peel potatoes at a terrible job, and now I get to raise my kids, and they see me as a business owner. It's just hugely transformational. My time's about up, so I'm not going to touch on the other 2, but Pete Oakes, who started a business in a prison, the prisoners now have this deal where the highest thing you can do is to send your kids through college while you're in prison. And 5 of them have accomplished it. It brings tears to my eyes what they're doing there. Okay, so this is my last slide before I introduce Jeff Schaefer, but Impact Foundation has been around for 5 years now. Our average deal is just under $500,000. We have 9 employees. We've invested in 184 million for impact. What kind of causes? Redemptive methodology. These are businesses that proclaim the gospel in word and deed within the business, but don't necessarily have anything that fits in these other categories. But we can invest in those. So most of the things you're thinking about, if it's a Christian at the top who is trying to live out their calling through their business, you can make an investment early stage or whatever through Impact Foundation. Poverty alleviation is the next biggest category. And then when I go to the regular impact investing conferences and talk about our area of evangelism and discipleship, they look at me very strangely. But there is a lot of great evangelism and discipleship that can be done. If you guys know the Dignity Coconut story, I think they baptized now 40 or 50 workers while they're taking care of many families in the Philippines. Just amazing things happening. So to be clear, when you guys want to do an impact investment, you just tell Tim, hey, this is what I want to do. We make it seamless behind the scenes. The dollars flow to Impact Foundation with one grant from NCF. We flow them back when there's returns. And the stories are the coolest part.